the way that influencers command audiences in gaming and gaming streamers, if you look at the top creators on YouTube or Twitch, they're mostly gamers.
We're moving away from dealing with actors and professional teams to basically like random people. It's easy for them to bail, to ghost, to forget.
And it's really being able to find key members in those countries that you can bring a part of your organization that knows better than anyone else.
Hey guys, on this episode of Next Big Wave, I'm here with Zach Schwartz. Zach is an American-Taiwanese founder in Bangkok. And Zach and I have the privilege of being neighbors. So we've known each other for a little while, and I've been excited to talk about his trajectory, moving from the US to China and then to Thailand. But I'd love to kind of hear it from you on air, what that trajectory looked like, what you studied, and how you started your career and how you ended up where you are right now. And we'll get into what you're actually doing now in Bangkok, but love to hear the backstory.
Awesome. Well, first, thanks so much for having me, Tim. I know we've known each other for a little bit. I'm extremely excited to share my story, as I'm sure a lot of your listeners are interested in doing a journey in maybe not their home country and starting a new business or whatever the new journey might be. For myself, I'm born and raised in the US. I'm born in mixed cultural background. I'm from a place called St. Louis, Missouri. And I always felt being from a relatively smaller city didn't give me the international connections and culture integration that I needed. Unfortunately, the way I grew up, I was unfortunately bullied for the way I looked. I didn't fit in. I even had to change schools at one point. And I always knew that I wanted to be in a multicultural environment. So that eventually led me to go to university in Los Angeles at USC. And I always, from that moment, even before that, wanted to work in Asia. I guess part of it's through influence by my father, because he was one of the pioneers of first doing business in China after they opened up in the late 70s and 80s in Taiwan. And through USC and their programs and exchanges in China and Thailand, I was able to exchange an internship in China. I saw massive opportunity in Asia. I wanted to kind of have a dual connect between the US and Asia and grow and start something there, which eventually led me to Thailand and another exchange program. And I fell in love with the country. I fell in love with people and culture, but also in terms of startup opportunities, I saw massive opportunity. This is about 12 years ago or 10 years ago, where mobile growth was explosive in the region. And that's led me to be here now for 10 years.
And you've really kind of taken the bull by the horns and actually appropriated the culture in the sense that you've learned the language. You're bilingual. I don't know about other language, but you speak Thai fluently. I've heard it. It's really good. And that's kind of a good way to embed yourself in the local culture, which a lot of the founders that I've met haven't taken that extra step. And I think that's what makes you special as a foreign founder. And it gets you far further ahead than a lot of the people that might move here end up having. So can you talk about like what made you want to learn Thai and like the reason why you wanted to embed yourself so deeply into the culture? Is it for business? Is it personal?
Absolutely. For myself, Thai is my fourth language, my third language that I
Cool.
learned. So I've studied Spanish and then Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, and then Thai. For myself, I always felt that in order to really uh, embed or communicate with someone, and there's a famous quote, I forget who said this, but when you speak in English, the international standardized language of business, you're speaking to someone's mind. But if you're speaking their local language, you're speaking to their hearts. And I truly
Mm.
am a proponent believer of that. The way that someone can communicate or that someone feels is completely different, especially sharing their creativity or emotions or feelings about a project or an idea is much different in their local language, depending on their fluency. And I always felt that if I'm going to communicate with someone on a long-term work setting, I should communicate in their local language to hear all their ideas. In the same way, I want to be able for them to understand me and how I feel, which has led me to one of the main reasons I learned Chinese. However, it's not as good as my Thai now being based here and the way I run my business here. But actually, the main proponent of why I was so tedious in my Thai language learning and my accent was because when I first started here, I actually started as an actor and a model, and my agent pushed me to do Thai classes to perform on TV in Thailand.
Very cool. So I know you very specifically for Madeviral, and you're rocking the merch right now. But upon browsing your LinkedIn, I also noticed you were a co-founder of MoreMate, which is a dating app. I didn't know this about you. Can you elaborate?
Absolutely. So Along the time when I was doing my modeling and acting, I also was led into startups deeply, and I still wanted to hold on to my business degree and apply that and my business skills and knowledge. I first started something in Myanmar that didn't take off, and then I got into MoreMate. One of my friends created an application, online dating app, invited me to be a co-founder and join in for the marketing and execution of it. And we were eventually brought in by an accelerator program by Telstra, which is the biggest
Hmm.
telecom in Australia, in Singapore to build and grow that. Learned a ton of that, learned absolutely a lot about product development from that, tech development, tech stacks, knowledge and skills I did not have. We had a monthly active user base. It was small. It was about 10K, 120K registered users. Unfortunately, it did not monetize well, and we eventually had to shut down the servers, but that led me to my current opportunity now.
So you said that the experience at MoreMate sort of led you to that, the discovery of how powerful and fast growing mobile usage was in Southeast Asia. So what is Madeviral, and tell me more about it basically.
Absolutely. So being in MoreMate, a mobile dating app, I had a good taste of users, user acquisition, the whole process of growth, and understanding different people's preferences for the region and marketing through that, which led me to my current partners and co-founder CEO, Don, who's been in gaming forever. And he was launching an opportunity to focus on marketing for gaming companies in the region.
Mm.
And with the explosive growth of gaming as well, mobile as well as PC console, it was a perfect opportunity. I'm a gamer. I love gaming. And what we do and what we provide is we provide marketing services, branding, content, creative, production, marketing, and strategic planning for game companies in the region when they launch games or promote games.
Okay. So are you kind of like an agency, or there's more to it? Like you provide certain products for them? Like what's the real story behind it?
In really simply put terms, we're an ad agency and a video production house, and our specialization is gaming. So when you think of the big agencies such as WPP, Publicis,
Hmm.
Omnicom, Dentsu, Hakuhodo, very similar into the structure and the services that they provide, except we are specialized in gaming.
So you guys, I know we've talked about this, but you kind of like the number one agency for gaming in general, but more specifically mobile gaming, right? In the at least in the region.
Across the region, we cover PC, console, mobile. There's many different localized agencies in each country. I would say to somewhat of a confidence that we are the most well known, and I would happily say we do it the best. We're now at the level where we're taking deals from other competing top tier traditional big ad agencies, and
Mm.
they're coming to us because simply they have a difficult time figuring out and knowing gamers, and we know gamers the best, and not necessarily just for gaming publishers. It could be an electronics brand or headphones that are promoted to gamers. We know the gaming audience. Our slogan being, we're marketing for gamers by gamers.
So are you very like data driven? You know, as like you're doing all this work for your clients, but are you collecting the data and processing it and leveraging that for your benefit as well?
To be honest, on our side, we're not as data driven as maybe what a digital marketing, performance based marketing company might be. And we like to clarify that very specifically. One of the only services we do not do and do not touch is performance based marketing. We could in the future, it's just not our current path. A reason being,
Mm.
most of our clients have that service in house. What we specialize is we are on the brand direction. So when they come creatively and they look at us and they look at the markets, is how can we connect with our audience the right way when we promote our game to the target audience? Now, of course, there's different metrics that we leverage, different platform analytics that we use for influencer marketing or in general PR or different
Hmm.
stats for viewership, which I would say is a base level. But it's our intuition plugged in with that base level metrics that really makes us knows how to properly structure a campaign.
Okay, cool. So a lot of creative rather than data, but still a bit of both. And so, you know, you mentioned one of the most well known in the across the region. So, what are some? Can you? I don't know if you can talk about it, but what are some games or franchises that you guys are involved with?
Absolutely. I love to talk about it. Probably one of the most recent projects we work on is Call of Duty, which many of your listeners I'm sure has heard of, especially if they've ever gamed before. I know you
Love
are
it.
also a fan of Call of Duty. And I feel like whenever I log on Call of Duty, I get shot immediately within 3 seconds, and I'm constantly respawning. So it's not as a fun experience for me. But Call of Duty is one of the biggest launches we did. We're working with Activision to make that launch all across Southeast Asia. We worked with Riot Games very closely for many years from their mobile game launch of League of Legends Wild Rift to Valorant,
Mm.
their shooter style, FPS style game. We've worked with Hoyoverse, with Genshin Impact, Hong Kong Star Rail. We work with Tencent for a lot of their titles as well, being the biggest game company in the world. Ubisoft, some really cool launches and cool projects we've done with Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, which is one of my most favorite open world games,
I love
and
it.
many of their other titles as well. Sega, we've worked on the Sonic titles, growing up playing on the Sega Genesis back in the day in the early 90s. We helped them launch their new Sega titles, Yakuza series titles. Bandai Namco, recently we've started working with, the list goes on, EA, FIFA, before they lost the IP rights for FIFA, we helped them launch that in the region, The Sims.
Okay, so yeah, pretty much any game that I know you've worked on. That's pretty sick. Any VR stuff? Because I know I just recently tried the Far Cry VR experience in Emporium or M Sphere, I forget. Such a fun experience. Do you know what I'm talking about or not?
So I haven't tried the Far Cry VR experience, but I've been to many gaming conferences, and it's always a highlight feature of many gaming conferences or tech conferences showcasing the latest VR gear. However, VR gaming, to be honest, it's quite disappointing, and it is sad for what we thought 10 years ago with a huge investment into VR. 10 years ago,
Mm,
we thought it would be Ready Player One or almost similar to Ready
right.
Player One by now, but it's just so far behind it. And even
Maybe
most of
for
them,
the best though.
maybe for the best. Personally, I would love to completely immerse myself in a gaming world. These new environments that they're building in Unreal Engine are absolutely beautiful and extremely realistic. And to be even more immersed in that would make the gameplay even more real for someone, or in other uses for meeting, connecting, community, social media. But the graphics are still far behind. The tech is a little bit bulky. I know they're getting better. It's getting more portable, but
Mm.
none of the top tier gaming publishers are taking it very seriously, other than maybe a few racing games and some other imported games.
So
It's
when you
still
say
far away.
top three publishers, who are you referring to? EA, Activision,
The
Ubisoft?
the top few publishers.
Oh,
So when we
top few. Sorry. Okay.
but some of the ones you mentioned, EA, Ubisoft, Activision, Tencent, NetEase, those would
So
be
none
some of
of
the
those
top.
are taking it seriously at this point.
I'm sure they have some investments in VR, especially Tencent being the biggest gaming publisher in the
Mm-hmm.
world, but it's not a popular title yet. You don't see people having it as large as other gaming titles.
What do you see being so in depth in the or so embedded in the industry? Excuse me. What do you see the trends in gaming? Like, if it's not VR, what is it? Is it still mobile growing at a fast pace, or what? Is there a comeback to PC? Like, I'm just curious because I've stepped away from gaming as actively as I used to, and I went from PC a long time ago to consoles very quickly, but I never jumped the gun. I just never jumped into mobile gaming, and I'm just curious what the trends are looking like these days.
So it's hard for me to give a confident answer because what we feel the trends are, they could be changing very different. Great example of that is console gaming. And when Google Stadia, their online streaming for gaming, launched back at Game Developer Conference in San Francisco in 2019, everyone thought, okay, this will be the last generations of consoles, or maybe one more generation of consoles. But consoles are still extremely strong in the market, and most of the
Mm.
online gaming stream platforms where you just have a monitor, plug it in, and connect to the servers and can play games without having to download or any hardware for it, uh, hasn't really launched as well. Xbox, I know Microsoft has their own version of it, PS has their own version of it. It's getting a little bit more popular, but Amazon Luna, they launched, didn't really work out. Google Stadia launched, didn't really work out. Mobile gaming, obviously, with the growth of mobile, it's still, I would say, continuing to grow massively. I would say PC is making a big comeback right now, especially
Mm.
in regions where it was regarded as a mobile first only region in a lot of the developing countries. But PC has been coming really strong in these regions, Southeast Asia being one of them. Console gaming will continue to grow as these countries become more wealthy, have higher disposable income to spend. I'm not sure when to say when the end of consoles would be and move for completely to streaming, but I say it's farther back than what people originally thought.
Cool. So similarly, like I like to talk about trends in general, but now talking about advertising for gaming, like I remember when mobile gaming was just starting out, the everyone was really investing in like the most basic advertising, so just like little banners on free games that would promote other games in the network, right? That was kind of like the premise of mobile gaming advertising. Then they develop all these in-game stratagems, and you basically pay to play, but instead of paying, you could watch ads to play, and that was like another variation of that. And things have evolved, and now you're seeing like full-on productions, and this is where you come in, full-on productions for mobile gaming. Like you'll see people buying out Super Bowl ads for mobile gaming, right? Like where is this heading, and like do you have any insights into the trends for digital marketing for gaming in general?
Absolutely. So 10 years ago, especially in Asia region, most in Southeast Asia, most of the game advertising, mobile gaming, was only focused on CPI, cost per install, or CPC, cost per CPM, cost per million impressions, which is the traditional performance advertising. What I mean by that is ads you see on YouTube, on Facebook, on Google, or other social media platforms. That as a banner ad, you click on it, goes to the game install. However, that industry was becoming too saturated. And what I mean by too saturated is there weren't enough readily available installs. And the price per install, CPI or CPM, was becoming way too high if a lot of games are marketing to only the same batch of people that are available to target on those installs. It was also unfortunately plagued by a lot of fraudulent installs, ghost
Mm.
installs. Even I've interviewed people that came from companies where their systems and algorithms will be set up to not just fake an install, but also fake a tutorial and fake a little amount of spend. So a client spending money would see, oh, this user is legit. Not only they finished the tutorial, but they actually spent a little bit of money. But it would be so
Mm.
little, it wouldn't be enough to actually make a difference. It's insane. So the trend that from 5, 6, 7 years ago was moving to influencers now. The way that influencers command audiences in gaming and gaming streamers, most if you look at the top creators on YouTube or Twitch, they're mostly gamers,
Right.
game casters. They were able to command much better return on investment for advertising for a lot of these publishers, and not just in seeing an ad or an influencer talking about it and clicking on it, it would be more engaging. These people would follow the streamers because they follow whatever games they're playing. They want to see how they play it and they learn about it. So it's much more easy for a user when they download and play a new game. They're already seeing someone they like and follow play the game. And it's a much easier transition, driving long-term engagement. For advertising in general, this is what we do. Since we do not do performance marketing, we do creative, branding, influencers, production. It's coming to the level of what you see traditional ad agents do for big brands. If you buy a bottle of water or a Coke or McDonald's, the same way that they would do advertising, but just a little bit more focused and specified for gamers and how they would engage with the content.
Damn, very cool. Yeah, I've always wondered about these like Twitch streamers and all, because there's a very finite amount of like very influential ones. I'm sure there's like smaller and micro influencers as well, but let's say you're a big game franchise and there's like a ton of games coming out, right? It's not just one a year. So how are they like you're saying it, the ROI is still there, right? How are they fighting for these very few influencers to kind of focus enough time on their game to command influence? I'm trying to make it work in my head, and I'm like, there's too many games for too few streamers. Or maybe I'm not as well informed as I think I am about streamers, and I think there are fewer than there actually are.
You are right. There are only a small batch of influential streamers. When I say influential, I mean mass market gaming influential. But then if you go a little deeper, and this is what we specialize is there's a lot of niche influencers and niche titles. We don't just hire any general gaming influencer to market MOBA or MMORPG game or RPG style game or anime style aesthetics. We really seep into what are the audience and the users of these influencers. What games do they play? What games do they like? The aesthetic appeal of the game, the game tactics, the gameplay, the style, as well as the genre, of course, to match it. So even among gaming influencers, there's so many subsets of different audiences and different types. And even below them, there are, I would confidently say, millions of streamers worldwide that are
Right.
streaming on all multiple platforms. Now, the question is who is influential? One is, of course, based on how engaging their audience is with their content, which is based on metrics that you can pull up on any analytic website. But also, it's the type of content that they're going to be pushing out to those streamers. And this is how we filter what would work best for a gaming publisher. How do you command the attention of the biggest ones? Well, it's easy. You pay them.
Hmm.
You have to have the money to pay them, which is why it's so difficult for most game developers to truly market their game without a huge investment from a game publisher.
Yeah, no, I bet. But what's also interesting, and I didn't realize this, is that seems like advertising is going to cycles because originally we were all buying like eyeballs with absolutely no way of tracking performance. Then we went into like highly specialized performance marketing where you could track installs, you could track performance overall. And now we're going back into just buying impressions. In sense, you're paying like a streamer $5 million to stream for a month, but how they measuring the performance, because it can't be all affiliates. It can't be like, is there a way to track from someone watching a stream to install and to like gameplay? How are they doing that? Because that's something I'm curious about.
So when we launch a typical campaign, if there's any advertising that we're doing that is online, such as collaborations with big media, IGN, Kotaku, or streamers, there's always going to be a tracking link. However, the reality is most people don't click on the tracking link to download the game.
Right.
They search it on Google Play, they search it on Steam, and they download it or they buy it online themselves. So it does make it very difficult to track very clearly the performance metrics the same way you would in a performance marketing campaign where someone clicks on an ad on TikTok, Facebook, IG, and
Mm-hmm.
downloads and installs the game. Then you could track the entire life cycle of that user. There are ways to estimate it, isolate campaigns in specific periods of time in specific regions. So if you're launching a campaign, we'll do the big campaign with out-of-home advertising, which is billboards on the streets. I mean, that itself is hard to track. If you see
Mm-hmm.
a billboard on the street, how do you know which users downloaded it? And isolate in specific regions and on a specific day or weekend or time period and see spikes in the game based on that region. And you can kind of tell based on the spike in the region, what's the retention from that time
Mm-hmm.
period. The technology is getting better in some regions where we actually, on a billboard outside, we can link up with a telecom service provider. And for any user that's using that telecom service provider, let's say in the US you're using Verizon Wireless, you walk by a billboard in New York and that billboard's showing that game, they will send you an SMS to your device, also advertising that game,
Mm.
or start
Synchronized.
popping up ads in your the applications they have access to synchronize to track that. It's getting better to track.
Is it using beacons or it's really just GPS?
GPS mostly. I'm sure they probably use their beacons as well. I can't speak on the technology side of that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that's why I'm saying it's getting tougher and tougher. And I mean, there's ways to track it other than what you mentioned, like using QR codes with like that's why they always offering discount codes because it's not because they want to give a discount, it's they want to be able to track who came from that person and you have to have an incentive, right? So I understand all those mechanics. I'm just finding it funny that we're going in cycles. We're going back and forth between performance and impressions. Cool. So let's talk about your company though, like how you managed to scale it, like to be one of the leading agencies in the region. You obviously didn't start there. So what's the story behind that? And also interesting after that is how do you go from being at the top? Like how do you grow from there?
Absolutely. It is no easy feat to start any company, and specifically a service-based company, advertising-based, where it's not based always on objectivity, on numbers. It's based a lot about creative ideas, is extremely difficult. And to provide that service, we just have to really focus and dig our teeth in. And we know gamers. You trust us. And it's based a lot on trust. You must trust us at the beginning because we know gaming better than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike most companies where when they scale up and start up very quickly, they focus in just one region and one country. And it's very easy, not easy, but it's easier scaling up in one region, one country, one language than trying to do it at the same time in 6 different languages in 6 regions on having satellite offices or satellite co-working spaces all over the place. But that's how we started, because Southeast Asia is a very complex culturally language area. It's EU, but way more complex than that. And the way someone would advertise or connect with a user or potential customer. And when gaming publishers at the time, and still now, most of them are coming from outside of Southeast Asia, such as China, Korean mobile gaming publishers came in, and now Japanese and even foreign ones from the US, they rarely just focus on just one country to do their launch. They might do it at the beginning as a test ground and then do their launch across multiple countries in Southeast Asia. But the same campaign can't be for the whole region. It would not work. It would fail immediately. The way that users would connect with the game, the way the users would consume content, the way the marketing message would be for each country would be completely different, and in different languages and different cultures and different gamers that what they like. For us, we started with Thailand and Indonesia. Thailand being the biggest, I would say the most lucrative, best return on investment in Southeast Asia for any gaming publisher, and focus in those 2 regions. And then very quickly, within 18 months, I was on the ground in Philippines, Vietnam, hiring people in Malaysia to expand very quickly across Southeast Asia. So we might have started with one person in each of these countries or 2 people, but providing services all at the same time to a client sitting in China.
Okay, so you hyper localized off the bat pretty much, and that's what your competitive advantage was when all these studios were coming to you or coming to other agencies and saying, like, we want a Southeast Asia launch, who can handle the whole continent, as opposed to having to go to one studio at a time. That was your edge, right?
I would say definitely that's a huge strategic edge. Other than being specialized in gaming, that was a strategic edge, being hyper localized in each region, so that when you think about a client, they don't want to go out and try to find a local agency, vet
For
them
sure.
in 6 different countries or however many for a specific region. They want to trust one agent that can do it the best for the specific type of services that they're providing.
Okay. And so, localizing like that is one of the topics I talk about with founders a lot when they talk about growing in Southeast Asia. It's one of the most difficult topics because it's not just the language, it's the culture, it's the cultural references, it's the KOLs or influencers. Like everything is very specific. And people think about it in number of countries, right? Like there's like 11 countries or like 7, depending on how many you want to go after. But even within a country like Indonesia, you have however many languages you can think of, like even just the leading languages, there's like 5 or 6, right? So how did you end up hyper localizing your content? Because just being in those countries is not enough. You must have had like a trick up your sleeve in order to get that success of localization.
That is true. And even right now, we're having the issue in the Philippines. And I'm sure, Tim, you have this experience yourself. Philippines is Taglish in some regions, but if you go in other regions, like you mentioned, they have use other localized languages. We do have to adapt, and it's really being able to find key members in those countries that you can bring a part of your organization that knows better than anyone else. But going back to the point I keep harping on, it's more about the gamers. It comes number one. Because ultimately, gamers, even in different languages and different regions, if you're able to find that subset niche of gamers that love MMORPG games in a style of anime, then there's a way of marketing that could attract and be appealing to all of them. And then just do the tweaks in localization for each one of those countries. Of course, I wouldn't be able to tell our gaming publisher, hey, this is exactly the language and keyword message you should be doing in Indonesia or Tagalog. I don't speak those languages. But we have people that are managers and directors that are on the ground that are very embedded in the gaming community that not just could give the local insights in the general culture, but also more importantly, the gamer insight. Because gamers will thrash hardly back on social media if they feel the game company is not marketing to them or giving them on what the gamers actually feel is authentic. They will see right through that.
Yeah, fair enough. One other thing that I'm always wondering about when it comes to localization is, especially with these big studios, big firms, they want to control the messaging, they want to control the narrative, they have very strict legal compliance departments. So when it comes to like creating the marketing content, you know what you have to do, but as an agency owner, being able to validate what is being said and done in all these different languages, how do you stay in control of that in order to comply with, your contract with these gaming brands or any client in general?
Absolutely. Each gaming publisher and gaming brand has their own set of branding guidelines and own levels of strictness and how flexible they are to localize maybe something a little bit different from their making message to a local country versus other publishers that know it must be exactly the same meaning. It's an art. It's an art form. How can we still be as authentic as possible that we are Thais, gamers marketing to Thais, Indonesian gamers marketing to Indonesians, but still keep in the same brand messaging as HQ for global. It's a lot of back and forths. It's really a lot of edits, and it's really going out and asking the community, asking our influencers, the top gaming influencers, or asking other gamers in the region, what do you feel when you see this messaging? How do you know or test and trial from experience? And all of our team members have that experience that they could be able to say, this is not going to be authentic messaging. The client might say, no, we need it to be like this, and we find a middle ground somehow. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's failed. Sometimes it's failed really badly. There's a case of this in a music video we put out with the lyrics where it completely was. I never haven't seen a YouTube music video where there's more dislikes when they had dislikes than likes. And the music video was really cool, but the lyrics did not fall in the right translation, unfortunately.
Mm. So it's funny because I was just about to ask you, what's your biggest horror story as a founder? Is that it, or is there something else that you want to talk about? There's always
There,
something fun.
as a founder in general, just like any other founder, there are hundreds that I could pick up as absolute horror stories. That is a day by day basis. But just that example I just gave you with the lyric translation for a music video is really, really
Mm.
important. Not just we've invested so much in the rappers and the artists and the beautiful production and nailing it, super cool music video, hit hard with one of the biggest gaming brands in the world, and the lyrics ended up bringing out huge levels of trauma from the toxicity of the users that experienced it in the game, that they were relayed that in the message, that the translation did not fall right. It was PR control for that, but we weren't we weren't dealing with the PR for them. We were the PR agency for them. We were the production and marketing. There's horror stories where even the littlest things, where a streamer streams for 2 hours and our team members are watching the stream and they forget to add the tracking link to the stream, or they forget to mention one of the key characters or key items in the game as part of the stream. And some of our people are calling their girlfriend or boyfriend to bang on their door in the stream and says, hey, don't forget, you need to mention this. You're live streaming right now. And it's very stressful, especially in a live stream. You must be able to adapt immediately and
Mm.
follow at least some of the protocols that we give them, and also be as engaging as an authentic to the audience, that you're not just a talking mouthpiece for some of our brands.
That's actually super interesting, and I don't think about it enough. But this whole influencer marketing thing is that we're moving away from dealing with actors and professional teams to basically like random people who have certain degrees of professionalism, but not all of them are trained. It's easy for them to bail, to ghost, to forget, etc. So it must be a whole different set of skills to manage this type of people, and you're dealing with a large scale of them. And unless you're dealing with agencies that do their own thing, but like you have to manage a bunch of different people at any given time and keep track of all. It's seems like a nightmare.
It is. As you said, a lot of these influencers, some of them are kids, they're high school kids, college kids that have this massive following. And while they might have a very engaging audience and great content, to be able to work professionally and to put out a campaign in line with an agency that also has a creative script with the brand guidelines from our client, they have certain metrics and protocols that they need to follow. it's oftentimes it is, yes, very much a nightmare for to get them and rein them in and follow. But I would say the key thing, just like in any business dealing, is building relationships. And our teams,
Mm.
as one of their KPIs, especially the ones that are working with our vendors and influencers, is they must build close and authentic relationships with the people they work with, or else the message will never be as authentic, and the gamers will see right through that, or it'll be just more difficult to work with them in the future.
Um, I love it, and I'm glad you mentioned KPIs because this reminds me of a conversation we had on the road to Khaosan Road during Songkran, and the way founders do, we're partying, but we want to talk about business. And we were discussing how you keep your teams engaged and really part of like every budget and every project. And you had all these KPIs and reward systems. Do you want to touch base on that a little bit? I thought it was really interesting the way you did things.
Internally within our company, absolutely.
Yeah, internally.
So we believe in a profit sharing model. So even the people that are not on the client side, account managers, salespeople, people that are doing the what we call media buyers, they buy out of home advertising billboards or influencer coordinators, or even the creative in the company. They all receive a share of commission on every campaign that they work on, and it's split in a pool to each team, and we share it depending on which people worked on which campaigns and their manager and how they want to distribute it. And it's very transparent. We send them, here's all the campaigns you worked on, and here's your share of it. So they see and feel that each campaign that they're working on beyond their salary, they're getting an additional reward, financial reward for each one. And I think it's just the fairest thing to do for them.
I love it. I think it's super smart. I know it's like a very complex Excel spreadsheet, but at least they have access to it and they see how it works. So it's very cool.
Look, to be honest, it would make finance team and my life 10 times easier if we just give them an estimated annual bonus based on general performance. But in
Mm.
reality, we've discussed it. I've discussed it with others, and this is the fairest, most transparent way to calculate every single campaign to do and what's their contribution to it. And they see it very clearly. So every single night, weekend, late 2 at 3 a.m. call watching a stream they're on, they know they're at least not just engaged with doing it and working on a really cool game campaign, but they're also getting an additional financial reward for that.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's the best way to keep people A, motivated and stay working with you, but also it's just more fun when you're really actively involved in a company and not just another pawn, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. And I also know the answer to my next question because I see you working by the pool a lot. But, would you ever trade your life as an entrepreneur to go back to a 9 to 5 job?
Absolutely not. I've thought about it, and I thought for many years, if this doesn't work out, I have a business degree. I could always apply for a big tech company or gaming publisher or ad agency and work with there. But it's not just about my lifestyle that I could have the flexibility, even as stressful and lack of sleep and mental health, physical health takes a toll on that being an entrepreneur. But it's also that I'm building something. Me and my co-founder, we are building an empire. We're building our systems. We're building a new community of game marketing and helping these publishers. And it's kind of like every gamer's dream when they're a kid. They get to work with games. They get to play our clients' games, and we get to build it together and make these connections together. Something that's very frequent in the ad agency world is super high turnover. People come in a year, 2 years, and they're
Mm.
out, and they switch out, and they go work in a house with a client. And what's shocking to us for a long time, up until a recent economic downturn in the tech industry last year, is people stayed with us for a long time, way longer than the average turnover for ad agency. And I always question why, as stressful as it is, as much the client is indecisive or has super high demands, but cutting budgets and doing weekends and nights, why do they still continue to stay in an ad agency, specifically us? And I think it really drives down to culture. We have built a culture where we're all passionate about building a community for gaming and marketing gaming and playing the games. And it's just a bunch of gamers hanging out and helping our gaming publishers reach millions of people.
Love it. So what game are you currently playing as a gamer? What's your go-to these days?
I do travel a lot, so I have a little Switch, and I've just recently started with Zelda Breath of the Wild. I'm a
I love
huge
it.
Xenoblade Chronicles fan, which is a similar RPG, but a JRPG style that I just finished up. I've Last year, the year before, I was on a lot of Far Cry. Love the Far Cry series. When I have a lot of time, which I don't, but during COVID, I got sucked into strategy games. I love Civilization. I could be sucked in for 8 hours in front of my PC building my empire. And it's so funny when I tell people that because people says, aren't you stressed building your empire at Madeviral every day and all the conflicts and issues and negotiations that take place on an hourly basis? And you go back home and open up a Civilization game where it's doing the same thing. But I love that. I love doing that. And that's exactly
Mm.
why I continue to do what I do.
You remind me of a meme I read actually this morning, so it must be serendipitous. It was like guys come home from a highly stressful job and say, "Oh, I'm gonna relax now," and open up a highly stressful game and like
Yes.
enjoy it.
Yes, exactly. That's a great comparison.
Cool, cool, cool. All right, so as a closing thought, I wanted to ask you if you had anything you wanted to shout out to, whether it's work or personal related.
In what aspect? There's many aspects I could hit on.
You just want to shout out, like if you're looking for a specific employee or a new partner, or if you want to shout out to your mom, like it's up to you.
Absolutely. So we believe in partnerships and working with others. And as being an agency, we're always absolutely open to working with other brands. If you are running a brand or have a consumer product that needs to reach a million people and want to target gamers, we can be your consultants and experts into that. If you have a Web3 company that also wants to launch a game on a blockchain, we are also helping Web3 do that as well. And if you're looking to work in the gaming space, and to shout out to anyone out there that loves games and never thought there could be a career, a serious career in this, there are so many. Even if you have no experience in developing or artistic ability, there are so many career opportunities in gaming. And in fact, to get worldwide gaming revenues, I think in 2022 was 150 plus billion, and the worldwide film industry was 100 billion. So gaming is huge, and it will continue to grow.
Of it. Zach, thank you so mumuch for being on the on this episode, and on my end, that's the pod.
Thank you so much, Tim. Game on.
I just